All right, today we're digging into a fascinating biblical puzzle. We're going to connect a really ancient festival about bread to the tomb of Jesus. Now, I know that sounds a little strange, but the connection is absolutely powerful, and it's all wrapped up in the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
So let's get right to it. Here's the big question for today. How on earth does a festival about bread have anything to do with Jesus' tomb? It feels like a riddle, right? Well, as we're about to see, the answer is hidden in the symbolism and, this is the key, the timing.
Okay, so to crack this code, we have to go back, way back to the beginning, to the original rules for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So the instructions are right there in the book of Exodus. It was a 7-day deal, kicking off on the 15th of the month. And there was one main rule, one big instruction. You could only eat unleavened bread. That means no yeast, nothing that makes it puff up. It was meant to be this really powerful physical reminder of how the Israelites had to flee Egypt in such a hurry they didn't even have time to let their bread rise. All right, now this is where it starts to get really interesting. See, to get what this festival is all about, you have to understand the main symbol at its heart. What exactly is this leaven they were supposed to stay away from? Well, in a biblical context, leaven was way more than just a baking ingredient. It became this potent metaphor for something negative. Just think about how a little bit of yeast works its way through a whole lump of dough, puffing it up, changing it. Leaven came to symbolize corruption, sin, and especially false teachings that spread and distort the truth. And Jesus himself used this exact metaphor. He told his disciples point blank, "Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees." And believe me, he was not talking about what was in their lunch. It took them a minute, but the disciples finally got it. The leaven Jesus was talking about was the teachings of the religious leaders. Their mountain of man-made traditions was starting to block the simple, powerful truth of God's actual commands. And check this out. This is a perfect example. God's law is so simple and clear. Honor your father and your mother. But the Pharisees came up with this tradition called korban. A person could declare their money as korban, a gift for God, and then use that as a loophole to get out of financially supporting their own aging parents. See what they did? They used a man-made rule to completely cancel out a divine command. That is the leaven. You know, there's a name for this kind of thinking: legalism. It's this idea that you can earn your way to salvation just by ticking all the right boxes, by following a long list of rules. It's all about what you do on the outside, not what's in your heart. This was a huge part of that leaven Jesus was warning everyone about. Okay, so we've got our key symbols locked in. Leaven stands for sin and corruption, and unleavened stands for purity. Now, let's see how this all connects directly to the last, most critical hours of Jesus' life. And this right here, this is the crucial part. To really unlock this whole thing, you have to look at the clock. I'm telling you, the timing is absolutely everything. Just look at this timeline. On the 14th day of the month at 3 p.m., the Passover lambs are being sacrificed in the temple. At that exact same time, Jesus dies on the cross. Then, just 3 hours later, the sun goes down and the Feast of Unleavened Bread officially kicks off. The timing isn't just close, it's perfect, it's precise, it's synchronized in a way that's just, wow. The early Christians saw this timing and knew it wasn't a coincidence, not at all. They saw it as a fulfillment. The Apostle Paul just says it straight out. For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. The connection could not be more clear. Jesus is the ultimate Passover lamb. So, if Jesus is the lamb, what does that mean for the festival of unleavened bread that started the very moment he died? How did his followers start to think about that festival? Well, once again, the Apostle Paul gives us the key. He explains that because of Christ's sacrifice, the festival takes on this deep, new spiritual meaning. It's not just about physical bread anymore, it's about a whole new way to live. He writes to the church in Corinth and tells them to get rid of the old leaven so they can be a new, unleavened batch. He's not telling them to clean out their kitchens. He says they should celebrate the festival with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth, and not with the old leaven of malice and wickedness. He's totally redefining it.
So it really breaks down into this simple, two-step spiritual process. First, you get rid of the old leaven, that's the sin, the bad stuff, and second, you embrace the unleavened. You start living a life that's all about sincerity and truth. The physical act now points to this incredible internal transformation.
Okay, let's bring this all home. We have all the clues, we've put in the work, And now we can finally solve the mystery we started with, the truth that comes from the tomb.
So let's just lay all the pieces out on the table. Jesus is the Passover lamb. Leaven is a symbol for sin. So, unleavened bread has to represent purity, sinlessness. And Jesus, being without sin, was perfectly unleavened. And then the festival celebrating that very thing, being unleavened, starts at the exact moment his sacrifice for sin is finished. It all clicks into place.
And that, right there, is the answer to our big question. The Feast of Unleavened Bread becomes this perfect picture, a symbol for the time Jesus' body, the ultimate, sinless, unleavened bread, was laid to rest in the tomb.
Think of it as a memorial. Not a memorial of death, but of a perfect sacrifice at rest. His body, completely free from the leaven of sin, is in the tomb. The work is done. The price is paid. It's this quiet, powerful moment of finality, just before the explosive victory of the resurrection. The ancient festival's symbolism lines up perfectly.
And that leaves us with one final thought, a question that brings this ancient story right into our lives today. If we follow Paul's lead, the question for us is pretty simple, but it's also profound. What is the leaven in your life that needs to be removed to make more room for sincerity and truth?